Influencers, inspiration, and Instagram. This is Earned by Tribe Dynamics. Here's Conor Begley.
All right, welcome everybody to Earned by Tribe Dynamics. This is the podcast where we try to give you access to the most interesting people we can find in the lifestyle industry. And today we have what I think is probably one of the top 5 influencer marketing experts in the world. And I'm not exaggerating. So this is Michael McNeil. So Mike, welcome and thank you for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me. And if I'm the most interesting person you could find today, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, not even close. So for those that don't know, Michael, from 2011, I believe, through 2016, Michael helped to build the influencer empire known as Anastasia Beverly Hills, along with Claudia and Anastasia's help, obviously.
Right.
Absolutely. And they continue to be the number 1 brand we track in all of makeup in EMV today within the US. And then second, you're now the VP of Integrated Marketing at Huda Beauty, where you're seeing explosive growth or help to lead explosive growth within the US and work again with one of the other big presences within the beauty industry. So you've got experiences that most other people in the world don't have, which is why I'm excited for today.
Perfect. Yeah, let's get into it.
Awesome. Well, let's start with your background. So I want people to understand kind of who you are, where you came from. So I know that you went to LMU and you studied political science. Did very well from a grades perspective as well, so magna cum laude. What made you decide to pick political science? And then I also did some snooping on the back end, and Claudia told me that you were originally pre-med, which, and then somehow that ends up in the beauty industry marketing. So tell me about that. What made you choose political science, transition from pre-med, that whole thing?
Claudia's got a good memory. I'm going to call her after and be like, hey, good job. So my mom was a single mom, and she had quite a few children to take care of as a single mom. And she actually, with the help of my grandparents, put herself through school and became in law. She went into the legal field. So that kind of prompted me to, when I first started college, go into political science. I thought maybe I'd be a lawyer one day. And then quickly I was like, actually, I think I'm going to be a doctor. My grandparents were very into education, and they also helped raise me. So they were like, actually, like, be a doctor. So and my grandpa's an engineer from MIT, and he was a little bit like, okay. And I was like, okay, Grimes. But after talking to a few, school counselors and like doctors and things like that, they're like, stick with political science, but you're going to have to double major. You're going to have to do pre-med and political, and then med schools will love you even more. And I thought to myself, great, that's okay, double classes. So I took double classes at Loyola, basically like 21 units a term, which was pretty crazy. And so that's kind of where the pre-med came. So I was doing all of my pre-med stuff, took all of my MCAT exams, did my applications, had got a few interviews, which were really good and kind of like, sought after. And my family was super stoked. They were like, oh my God, Mike's going to be a doctor. And then one day I was having lunch with one of my best friends. Her name is Mary Catherine Mellon. She's still the director of marketing at Anastasia Beverly Hills. I think you know her. And I just kind of looked at her and I was like, I can't do this. I don't think I could do this. And I remember she's like eating an enchilada, and we're both like are eating, and she's like, well, you better figure it out. She was blank and very much in true kind of like best friend form. She was like, huh? And I asked her, and I was like, so look, I'm actually kind of having a little bit of a 1/5 life crisis. I think it was 21 or 22 at the time. I was like, if you know anybody who's hiring, maybe it's just going to be a sign. And no joke, she called me 2 days later and said, well, I know somebody who works at this really cool, like very small, like eyebrow company. And I was like, okay, well, when I said I wanted a job, okay, like let's talk about it. And literally I interviewed, and within 2 weeks I was working at Anastasia Beverly Hills. So it was like a very quick universal shift to my career. It was basically like the universe or God or, you know, whoever you want to say, basically was like, bloop, bloop, and like put me kind of where I was supposed to be. So it was very interesting.
That's a big shift. Like, how did your family react? Like, what was their, like, from doctor to like, I know I did all that work and took all those classes and.
So my mother's hilarious, and my grandparents and my mother are like very East Coast. We're from Boston originally. So my grandpa just was kind of like, what's happening? And my mother thought I was becoming a makeup artist. And she was like, what is happening? She's like, what do you mean you're big? She's like, you can barely draw. She's like, how are you gonna be a makeup artist? I'm like, no, Mom, it's marketing. And I had already been working at a branding agency through college and things like that. So it wasn't a complete shift. But my mother was way more excited about the possibility of me being a doctor than the possibility of me being a marketer, for sure, at the beginning. At the beginning, it took a little bit of, took some convincing. And then I remember when I gave her the first round of eyebrow products at Anastasia, she was like, okay, I accept this position, and like walked away. So,
well, I mean, you clearly made the right choice. That was like an insane journey.
It was an insane journey.
I have to imagine.
Yes. Yep, for sure.
When you started there, how small was it? Because I feel like that period that you were there was just like crazy growth.
So that period I joke about because I feel like I remember every single moment of every day, from the moment Claudia was interviewing me in her office that had like a zebra wood desk at the time, to like the day, like to my last day, 4.5 years later, something like that. So it literally, I tell everybody, Anastasia Beverly Hills was my PhD in beauty, but not just my PhD in beauty, but like marketing in general. I had branding experience, I had marketing agency experience, and being on the brand side, I had all those skills that were applicable, you know, but being on the brand side just opened my eyes to building something long term. And it literally was, it was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. I think working there changed my life. Claudia changed my life, and, you know, she really gave me a career. So did Anastasia, obviously, but it was amazing, and it was challenging. It was all the things that I think you would want to get out of like a really good college experience, but it was at Anastasia.
Well, I mean, it's just a very, like you said, it's just very unique. It's just not common. Most people in their careers won't be at a company that has that kind of growth.
Yeah.
And then also for you specifically, you know, to be involved in what I believe to be the primary growth engine for that business on the social media and influencer side, you know, with obviously Claudia and Anastasia leading the way, but you running a lot of the behind the scenes action is, and again, and it's like, it's unique not only from a growth, like, so you had the growth of the business, which is wild. You had the kind of, you're in the primary growth channel in terms of social and influencers.
Right.
And then it's in a period of time in which that whole thing was very new, right? Like,
right.
There wasn't like 2011, you know, that's 2011, 2012, that's when we started Tribe. Instagram really didn't even exist at that point, right? Like, I think Instagram got started in like 2013 or something, like 2012, 2013. So that's, it's just a really cool period of time.
It was the most amazing period of time because of the fact that we got to create things and we got to come up with ideas that really didn't exist at the time. What we knew was, we knew certain things weren't working. Certain things weren't working with our marketing program. Certain things weren't working with the way the brand maybe even was positioned, you know, but they worked at a time, you know, and the amazing thing about Anastasia and Claudia is they're both such, like, are we allowed to cuss? Anyway.
Yeah, go for it.
They're such fucking visionary women, you know, and there's not a lot of people out there, particularly in the beauty industry, who would literally sit there and look at each other, hire a new team, and say, let's try to change things up, because, you know, the business was great. Like, it wasn't struggling, there was nothing, it was growing, but it was just this understanding that there was something new here, that we could pour gasoline on that fire, on that spark, and really turn something into something huge. And we did. So it really was the most exciting time because it was the Wild West. It was let's try this, let's stop this. It was a constant test and learn, and it's my opinion, some people like maybe from other companies might have a little bit of a different opinion, but it's my opinion that at Anastasia Beverly Hills, we really kind of invented, in my opinion, what beauty marketing looks like today, via Instagram, via influencer, via social media. There was nobody else that we could look to at the time and say, right, that's working, copy it. It wasn't that. It was actually, how do we solve for problems that we're having in our PR? How do we solve for problems that we're having with awareness? How do we solve for all of these things? And the answer, sorry, I'm getting notifications.
No, go. That's the point. Keep going.
How do we solve for all of these things that nobody's ever done before? And that was the interesting part. So, and it was
which is like the most exciting part too for me, right? Like, I love that. Like, it's like, okay, I mean, not that, like, it's like launching this podcast. Not that there's plenty of podcasts out there, and so I had that as a kind of a guide, but just the idea of getting something from 0 to 1, right? Getting from not started to started is just a really fun thing to do.
Yep.
And especially when you're having as much success as you guys were having. But again, I do think when you're in those moments, you can also it can be all consuming at the same time. Like, I have to imagine this was just what you were, living, breathing, eating, sleeping 24 hours a day.
So I had a crash course in everything, to be honest. I came with really strong writing abilities. I came with really strong analytical abilities. I knew how to work with brands to help them like build, brand documents and how to build out a brand and what the look and the feel and the USP. Like, I knew all of that stuff from my previous agency work. But what I didn't know was, to be perfectly honest, I didn't know anything about beauty. I had one beauty client at my previous agency, and it was like an organic like lip balm line. And so like to call that beauty, you could, right? It's technically, but it's more self-care. And so when I got into Anastasia Beverly Hills, I remember Claudia like looked at me once and it was so funny, and I kind of went, and I think it might have been my first week, and she was like, okay, so just tell me one thing. I was like, uh-huh. She's like, what do you know about makeup? And I literally was like, I got sisters, and she literally was like, I'll accept it. Like, she was like,
You had a no shit moment.
I think we both did, and I was like, I got this, don't worry. But you know what I did? Like, I threw myself in, and I remember like, and I learned all about kind of everything makeup and beauty. And it was a fun challenge because I don't personally wear makeup, but it was just a new world. It was how people wear makeup, how people wear like all types of makeup, men wearing makeup, gender non-conforming people wearing makeup, and it's trans people. It was an entire world of like creativity that I had never seen before. And actually the more I learned about it, the more excited I got.
Yeah, I mean, you can just go so deep into it as a category. I mean, that's part of the reason that it does so well from a content perspective. There's just so much to talk about. So talk to me about the mechanics of like day to day when you're at Anastasia, because obviously, Claudia and Anastasia are very visual, kind of front of the brand, face of the brand team members. How did you fit into that puzzle? Like, what were you doing? How are you enabling them? Like, how did those dynamics work?
So basically, we were such a small team. I think when I started, in the office there were maybe 12 people, including Anastasia and Claudia. And Anastasia was still working full time at the salon in Beverly Hills. So Anastasia is an absolute powerhouse. She would go to work and do her thing at the salon, make sure the salon was the best one in Beverly Hills, and then she'd come to the office. So it was amazing to see her be able to work that way, and the same thing with Claudia. But it was basically whatever we had to do in the beginning days, right? So it was writing copy, it was making sure the PR was right, it was all of us getting products and going to the gondola for Sephora and make sure the merchandising was right, checking every email, like doing all the e-com, you know what I mean? Like those beginning days, myself and Mary Catherine basically did all the marketing. We were the marketing team. There was somebody else who was above us, who wasn't there for a long time, but we basically did all the marketing, and Mary Catherine and I would laugh because it was simultaneously the most fun to get to do the creative stuff, right? You know, Claudia was always really great at being like, take a look at this. Like, what do you think? Look at this with me. Claudia is such a creative visionary, and so is Anastasia herself, that like their aesthetic is very honed, you know, but they always were like, let's do this, let's come up with ideas for this. So it was always really collaborative and really good. But we basically we were a very small team who did everything. It was pretty crazy those first couple of years.
Yeah. How did that, I mean, like from a tactics perspective, you know, obviously, I think Anastasia was basically running the Instagram channel herself at one point. But from how did you integrate? So you've got kind of Anastasia, which is the face of the brand, and Claudia, which is the face of the brand. But then you guys also worked with, I feel like you guys did a really good job of like highlighting the community and building a community. What were some of the tactics that you guys did there that you think really kind of paid off and were important?
Right. So I think we learned early on that we're like, okay, you know what? Like we started with Facebook, and then Facebook, we were like, okay, we're getting some traction on Facebook. Let's try Instagram. So then we went into Instagram before really anybody else was. The thing about it was, this was before anybody even really, like on a consumer standpoint, knew how to interact with Instagram. So we came up with this thing that like nobody else was doing at the time, that we came up with this idea of like collages, where we were almost treating Instagram at the time like Pinterest. And it sounds really strange, but I would be up until like 11 at night, like sending Claudia, like here's yellow purses, here's yellow shoes, here's yellow nails, here's girls with yellow hair. You know what I mean? To go with a look. And the look didn't necessarily have to do anything with us. And that was the magic, I think, of the Anastasia Beverly Hills Instagram at the beginning, was we created a beauty destination. And that's kind of what the important thing was. It wasn't originally, it wasn't something to peddle our wares, right? You know what I'm saying? We created a beauty destination that people came to regardless of if they knew that we sold anything. They came for inspiration. They came for advice, ideas. And as we saw those like old school collages, I always laugh because it seems so strange and like outdated, right? But it was years and years ago. People came to look at that and like it. And as we saw, we said, you know what? Let's throw in makeup. Let's throw in our products with other people's products. So we would go through and we'd be like, okay, this amazing artist is wearing, she's gonna wear Anastasia Browies, right? She's wearing MAC Paint Pot. She's wearing foundation from Too Faced or Lancome. And we were also, I think, one of the first ones who kind of broke that old school traditional marketing rule where you don't talk about your competitors. And that was the point where we went, whoa, and we saw the needle like go to full power, because I think consumers appreciated that. It was so many years of traditional marketing of saying, oh, we don't talk about our competitors, we don't mention them by name, like we're better, they don't exist, you know. And we actually did the opposite. We're like, wait a minute, people use multiple products. So this was the beginning of this thought of, look at your audience and speak to them in the language that they already speak. Don't try to make them speak your language. Speak to them how they want to be spoken to. And that's when the conversation started. And that's kind of when our Instagram just kind of like started to skyrocket. And you saw other brands do the same thing, you know, within 4 or 5, 6 months after, once I think they saw kind of how explosive our first round of growth was. I think we got to 3 million in that first year, which was something kind of like unheard of, maybe a year and a half or something, but it's a long time ago. But yeah, so we really just kind of like flipped the marketing script. And once I think we figured out that, like once all of us in the office saw that, you know, the content Claudia would put up, the content that like we would source on our own, Mary Catherine and I, once we saw that was happening, all of our eyes opened to, oh, the beauty community is really hungry for a shift in what we're giving them. And that's kind of when all of our other marketing started to change too.
What's crazy is that like still hasn't changed for a lot of brands. Like most brands still don't do that. Like there's still like oh sorry, we can't use this post. It has other brands in it. It's like what? Like
so I'll tell you, like I have been on interviews in my career where I'm kind of telling a similar story to what I'm telling now. and the looks on like the CEO's face or the owner's face are like blank slash like bewildered.
Yeah.
You know, because it's very interesting, I think, even for some companies today to have like a marketing executive come in and say, well, the way to win this game is by basically throwing out your whatever degree from wherever told you this, you know what I mean? And that's kind of the thing where I think a lot of people have hesitation, right? Because they fear their competitors instead of embracing their competitors. And I think real brands who are really gonna just continue to win, and in the future, are brands that embrace their competitors. And it's not really about competition as much as it is about community. And I think that's like the one thing we always did better than anybody at Anastasia Beverly Hills in that period of time, at the beginning, because nobody else was really there. We created a community when everybody else was trying to cultivate customers, and that was the big difference at that point in time.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're talking about it. Like, I've always found, like, when I'm talking to somebody about Tribe, you know, they'll be like, oh, do you do this? I'm like, no, but this other company does it really well, right? Like, you should talk to these other guys. They're really good at it. And what that leads to is people trust you more, right? You don't misrepresent what you do, and you're like, oh yeah, you know, we do have this product, but they're actually better at this. But at the same time, we haven't done it as Tribe, like really proactively from a marketing perspective. Like, how do we use our own channels, like, to highlight people that could be perceived as competitive to us,
Yeah.
but aren't really, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, our job is to make these influencer marketers more successful. And like, whether that's using us or using us plus somebody else or using somebody else, you know, you build trust by, you know, not only representing the stuff that makes you money.
Exactly. That's 100% it.
I don't know why we haven't been doing that. Well, anyways, I felt like you were talking and I was like, God damn it. Like, why aren't we doing this? Like, I do it personally, but like, we don't do it as a company.
Well,
and my marketing team might kill me after this, but
let me tell you, don't kill me either, marketing team. I'm sure. I know a few of you. I've met a few of you, and you're all very lovely people. But don't kill me. But that's a whole other content stream, and it's a whole other really valuable content stream, because nobody wants a hard sell. You know, it's 2020.
No.
You know, it's things are tough out there. Nobody wants a hard sell. You know, and Claudia and Anastasia and Mary Catherine and myself saw that in 2011, 2012, right? And that hasn't changed, you know. Nobody wants to be spoken at, they want to be spoken to. You know, it's very simple, kind of like, it's very simple interpersonal communication skills, and I think that's kind of like the key here. And people want to trust who they're working with, I think, now more than ever.
So frustrated at myself. Okay, anyways,
Conor,
let's move on.
Conor, you got this. You're doing great. You're doing really great. I think you're okay. But yeah, don't send anybody on the marketing team after me though, because I don't need a.
No, I will. So tell me about. So obviously you've worked with two of the biggest personalities in the entire beauty industry, right?
Yeah.
We'll call it three.
Yeah.
What has been the difference in your relationships with those people? Right, so obviously for Huda, she's not in the U.S. most of the time.
Yeah.
And so there's just a real. It's not, you're not sitting in the office with her every day. What has your relationship been like with those, three personalities, and then how's that changed over time?
To be honest, I'm so lucky, because I'm really blessed to just be able to sit there and say I have a great relationship with Claudia. Even after years of not working together, we still text each other, we still say hi. We still get, there's still heads up, like, hey, heads up, this is happening. Like Anastasia, whenever I see her, I get like the biggest hug, and you know what I mean? It's with them, I'm lucky because I work with very real people, and that I think is something that I've been really selective with in my career, because there are founders or non-founders who are working. And the one thing that I really got out of my time at Anastasia, not the one thing, but one of the big things, is an appreciation for people who are real and they actually kind of like walk their talk, And Anastasia and Claudia are like that, and like nothing really has changed in our relationship, except I just don't see them as much, you know. And Claudia is hilarious because she's like, I guess your competition, but like whatever, you know what I mean? Like she jokes, and you know what I mean? She's like, and like, but that's her, you know. And like she's just a cool, like, I think Claudia taught me how to be cool, if I'm gonna be honest. like if I'm gonna be just super honest about it. Like I think there was like a time where I was like wearing a yellow shirt and she's like, come here. I was like, what? We don't do this. And I was like, got it. Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, but it was in like a best friend, big sister, like, come here, like, I'm gonna help you, child, kind of way. And you know what? But that's how it was to work there. It was if you got into that relationship, they're such cool, like, smart people. That kind of lasts forever. And Huda is the exact same way. And when I interviewed with like Huda, I literally was like, okay, founder interviews go like one way or the other. You're either like boop or you're not. And I have taken a few jobs where they're amazing people, but like there's not as strong of a connection. And that's okay, you know, that happens, you know, it's just, you know, personalities and things like that. But I remember after talking to Huda and Mona, who were both on my first interview, and it was like a phone interview, I remember thinking to myself, okay, these are the actual, like, nicest, coolest people I have talked to, like, ever in a long time, whatever you want to say, whatever period you want to say. And I remember the one thing that really struck me about Huda is I walked into Dubai, into the office the first time. She had never seen me, by the way, like we had never met. And she came running up to me and she's like, Michael, and gave me a hug. And I was like, how do you even know who I am? You know what I'm saying? Like, because, but for influencers, that's not always the case, right? For business owners, that's not even the case. And at Huda, their main concern is people. Their main concern is creating a family. And the family is first in terms of, and the family is not the Kattan sisters. The family is people who work for the Huda Beauty umbrella. And that was just such kind of like a magical thing to be able to work with them, because they truly, like, the joke is in the business is like, you know, we give all the fucks at Huda Beauty. And it's so true, because in every single thing that they do it for the people they work for, or who work for them, I should say. And that's the most beautiful thing. I spoke to Huda and Mona last night, and literally like the first 15 minutes of all of our calls are just like catching up with each other and just seeing what's new, how's it going, like family, you know? And that's the beautiful thing about this relationship. I can't speak highly enough about Huda and Mona, and Alia is the third sister, because they really are just, I swear to God, like I sometimes scratch my head, I'm like, God, I gotta be nice like this. I have to be as nice as they are, because
I'm not this nice.
I literally was like, wow. They're like, Michael, you're so nice, and I was like, you guys are really nice though. Like, this is like a level of deep caring about human beings that, you know, I've not experienced in so long. And honestly, like they're the most beautiful people. Like, they're so special to me, and I'm lucky enough to say that in both situations, both sets of like these strong, brilliant female founders that I've been able to work with are so amazing that I am lucky to keep them in my life during, after, you know, like they're just so, I've been lucky. And again, it's a little bit by design, because I think when you have really good experiences, you can sort of navigate with your career like this, maybe not this, maybe not this, right? So I've been immensely lucky with the people I've been able to work with, particularly with Huda, Mona, Claudia, and Anastasia.
Yeah, it's a pretty special crew.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, you talk about relationships there, and, you know, that's one of the things that we talk a lot about, and I think that gets lost in this whole social media influencer space, is that people approach it like just any other marketing activity, where it's like, oh, let's find some people, we'll pay them to talk about us. Oh, this person's cool, Kylie's cool, let's pay her to be an ambassador of the brand. And like, that's just not really what it's about. So, you know, obviously taking a step back to the Anastasia days, then we'll go in kind of full into the Huda days. You know, how How many of those relationships have you brought with you that you formed back then on the creator side? I'd have to imagine it's a ton.
It's a good few. It's a good few. It's you meet people, you get to know people, and especially kind of I think in like the beginning days, like the early days is where I would say like Anastasia Beverly Hills and at Jouet. Are when I was really able to kind of cultivate relationships that were meaningful beyond, like business, right? And that's I think the whole point, because I think what people forget is, I think what a lot of big businesses or a lot of marketers try to do is they try to throw money, they try to throw budget at something. And by the way, like it's going to work for a bit, right? You know what I mean? It's going to work, but it's a one-time, it's transactional. It's a one-time thing. And, influencers, I think the way we did it at Anastasia, and this was, I have to give a lot to Anastasia in this regard, because Anastasia is the ultimate relationship person. Like she is the ultimate person who is like, she values relationships. She's really good at it. And she cares. Like it comes from a place where she genuinely is like, believes they're important. It's not about anything else. And we treated it that way at Anastasia. Each person was a person. Each person wasn't a KPI. Each person was somebody that we were going to like lift up. We would maybe mentor a little bit if they weren't already really big. It was all about, it was community based. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't any of these things. It was really just about creating real relationships where we would help each other when we needed to. And then we took that same, or I took that same thing to Jouet when I was at Jouet, and we made even more relationships and kind of, built that, into a really nice kind of like piece of like, the niche kind of luxe like beauty industry. But it's all about relationships. It's not about throwing money at things. It's about getting to know people and figuring out what's important to them. And by the way, like newsflash, so I think like marketers out there like listening, like young budding people, maybe like some execs, like,
that's who this is for.
Like nobody cares about your business. You care about your business. Like, and I say this and it's like super irreverent, and that's just kind of my style anyway. I have like spikes through my face and tattoos out in boardrooms. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's, nobody cares about your business. You do, your people do, and that's great, and your fans do. But at the end of the day, you have to care about other people for them to care about you, right? And that goes for creators, especially creators, because they're artists, right? And they're emotionally driven beings, because you have to be to create such beautiful anything on a media, anything that you're going to create, you have to put your heart into. So you got to have some soul there, right? And if you treat them like a number, if you treat them like a KPI, if you just approach them that way, there's enough business out there where they don't have to gravitate to that. You have to show them that you care about them just so that they care about you. It's dating. Like I kind of like liken it like when you go on a date, you're on a date. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You're
not there to just talk about yourself. Like if you started a date and you just said like, let me tell you about all the things I know about or that are cool about me. Yeah. And then you did that for the first 30 minutes of a date, like date's over. Right?
Date's over. Yeah, date's over. Even if it's like a budding influencer, even if it's an artist of any point, like I don't care if you have like 2 followers or 100 million, they're gonna check out because they're gonna be like, what's happening? What's happening? And it goes back to speaking to people in the way that they want to be spoken to. I always like bring it back to this like central message of speak the right language for the room you're in. And kind of that's where we are.
So there's a really good Seth Godin quote that does the same kind of thing. He said, you'll get everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. Like, if you can help other people get what they want, you're going to get everything you ever need.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And, like, thinking about it from that perspective, like, okay, like, I tell people this all the time. Like, imagine that you're a creator. What are your goals, right? Your goals, right, like, are a variety of things. One, you want to make money, of course. But 2, like, you want to get bigger. Like, if I have 50,000 fans, I want to get to 100,000 fans.
Yep.
So as a brand, how can you help me get to that goal?
Right.
Well, if you regram me, okay, great. I just gained 1,000 fans. Or you bring me in and you allow me to visit all of my fans in different Sephora stores across the country. Like, that's something that helps me to build my audience in that way. And so it's like thinking about what are their goals and then how do you help them get there.
Right.
And then ultimately they'll return that favor if you're helping them. Right?
Exactly. It's basic. It's like the basic properties of just like mentorship, right? Like it's so simple. Like, I feel like all of our business functions can be really like distilled down to very, very simple, like emotional intelligence. Like everything can come down to, if they need help, help them. If they want help, help them. If they don't ask for help, don't sit there and try to impose yourself on them. It's very simple relationship stuff. But, influencers should feel comfortable coming to you about stuff that's not related to your brand too. And that's the other thing that I tell people that blows their mind. You should have relationships with influencers. By the way, I don't even like to call them like influencers. Like, I feel like you should have relationships with people who happen to be in your industry, is kind of how I like to refer to these amazing folks, because everybody's like influencers and it gets like really like, I'm like, okay, like it's like, okay,
they're people.
They're humans, and they're really cool, and they're really good at what they do. And by the way, like, it takes a shit ton of work. So understand that they're people, understand that it takes a shit ton of work, and then find the ones that you would be friends with in real life. Because that's what I do, and that's kind of what everybody on my team does. Form real human relationships, and everything else is going to go from there, but I have worked, in a lot of places, and I've worked in places where that road isn't fast enough. That road isn't scalable enough. That road, no, we're going to throw money at it.
Words.
And I was at a place once, and the most amazing people were there, and this word kept coming up. How do we scale it? How do we scale it? And I was like, well, you're going to give me 16 months, and we're gonna scale it the right way. And that was like mind blowing. It was like a mind blowing concept. They're like, what do you mean 16 months? And I was like, this is a long game. Like, you understand this is a long game, right? And they're like, how about we just pay a lot of people? And I was like, okay, well, you're gonna make a few influencers really happy. That's true. You know what I mean? So like, there's certainly something to be said for that. What after? What are you going to do after? So can we weave this into a greater strategy if you really feel this is important? I'm just trying to be like strategic about it.
Yeah.
No, we'll get more money. And I remember just thinking to myself, I'm like, oh Lord, okay. So, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, it's a way to do it. Like, I'm going to use a Susan Kimism, a skimism. I just coined that. So I'm going to tell her that I've trademarked it, but she can buy it back from me. A skimism is like, of all the strategies in the world, it's one of them.
That is definitely a strategy. I can confirm that.
Yes, and that's just, and it's one of my favorite things that Susan says. And I'm like, so I'm gonna steal it from her. But again, but it's one of those. It's people don't want to put in the work, and it's one of these things where you got to put in the work. It's dating, it's relationships, it's friendships, it's marriage. It's all of these things. When there's an emotional connection, you have to put in the work. And, I think some marketing teams are really up for that challenge. And I think some marketing teams get mind blown by that concept. But I think that's where everything will end up. I think in 5, 10, we already see it. But I definitely think in 10 years, that whole paradigm is going to be very solidly locked into a lot of lifestyle and CPG brands.
Yeah, I think people are starting to get it, mostly because there's now been, dozens of these brands that have gotten to just massive size doing it the right way. Yeah. And so obviously there's still a lot that don't get it. I think we've been fortunate in that we work with a lot of the brands that do. So we've been able to, like, the thing that I love is like hearing you say these words just confirms everything that we say.
Yeah.
Right? So like
100%.
And it's so that's probably been the best validation. Like, one of the stories I like the best was from the Glow recipe episode we did. I asked them how did you, when they started their brand, and they're doing really well in the data that we track without ever having raised any money. They're profitable, never.
By the way, they're a great brand. They're a great brand.
And they, you know, the way that they kicked it off was they said, okay, we looked through all the different creators out there and found the people that we liked the best, 300 of them. And then we looked at all of their content and created an individualized skincare routine, including our products plus other products at other brands.
Yeah.
And then sent that to all 300 of them. And then offered to like say like, hey, and we'll send it to you like as like a package if you're interested. And they did that for 300
I want to take a note. Hold on, I'm going to take this.
Like nobody's doing that, right?
Yeah,
but that's what it is. And they said those people now are like the core of their community. Like all those people they reached out to at the beginning. And that's, you know, they've been and that's however many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago that they've maintained those relationships.
It goes back to some people are going to get it right off the bat. Some people, I think, need a little bit, you know, convincing. And then some people like to do it, I think, the more traditional way. And that feels comfortable for them. So I just think it's about what your priorities are, what your goals are. But I think if your goal is brand building, like not short-term profits, not like, oh, let's flip this thing. Like if your goal is brand building, this type of activation is now one of the basic cornerstones of what your marketing team should be doing in the beginning. It's
and at the end, right?
And
the whole time.
all the way through. But if you don't start with it, and you don't get the team used to it, you know what I mean? Because it does feel a little counterintuitive for some. You're not going to get off the ground in the way you want to. You're not 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the road. You're not going to look at your brand and say, holy shit, I have a shit ton of equity because of, you know, I have advocacy, I have, you know, awareness, I have consideration. Like I have all of these things that lead to a strong brand. You're not going to have it. You might have awareness. Maybe you could probably have awareness. Yeah. You might have a small amount of consideration because of the fact that you were able to build that awareness, but you're going to have zero advocacy. You're going to have a tripod with two legs. You know what I mean? Like it's not gonna stand the stress test of when things do get shaky, you know? So I think it behooves all marketers and all brands to really focus in on kind of like what's important, and it's in 2020 and beyond, it's relationships.
Totally. How did you, so talking about relationships, how was it, because when you came into Huda, right, so Anastasia started really small, grew it really big. And with Huda, it's grown a lot, but it was already, there was a pretty big community she had built out. How did you go about kind of introducing yourself to that community and getting to know them and also grow it, right? Because I think within the US, that was your goal, was to really grow the community. Talk me through that process of coming into something that's a little bit more established, but that you also have grown a lot since then.
Yeah. So I'm used to being in places where like they kind of install me as a bit of a growth engine, right? Like I'm used to them kind of, in my career, I'm used to be like, here's Mike and we're going to plug and we're going to like turn on the power, right? And it's just kind of been, and it's because of what we were able to do at Anastasia, I've been able to kind of just like take bits of that and make it relevant to other businesses, right? Now, at Huda, that script was not the same as my typical trajectory outside of Anastasia Beverly Hills, right? This was already, as you said, Huda was already the number one influencer in the world, period. Like point blank, like Huda was in a different country. She was in Dubai. She was already the biggest influencer in the world. The brand was already smoking hot, on fire at, you know, all of their retail partners worldwide. And there was this like cult-like celebrity around Huda and Mona that was different. And I was like, okay, so I had to really evaluate, okay, so here's my repertoire. Here is my, like, you know, like you open up your like coat and like, here's all your tools, right? And I'm like, which of my tools are right for this job? And the first 6 months, it was really hitting the ground running. And honestly, I was employee number 3 in the United States. So,
which is crazy considering how big the business was there already.
Yeah. So I literally
and also
was like,
just the general size of the Huda team. Like I remember talking to you guys back then, and it was like, oh, we're like 50 people. I'm like, you guys do like over 100 million in revenue. What do you mean you're 50 people? Like,
and let me tell you, but it's the same story at ABH, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. It's super small.
It's like small but mighty, right? And so I'm so used to small but mighty, and I actually prefer it. But it was really about figuring out on the ground what the United States and North America needed, and then how to integrate those policies into a more global picture about surrounding influencer, a more global picture surrounding comms in general, and PR, and how to do 360s for marketing and things like that. So when I was hired, I actually was hired to do all of the integrated marketing for North America. So that's like 360s retailer support, getting launches off the ground here, making sure that awareness, building awareness, all of the things, right? All of the things were kind of like under me and, Susan. And what was actually not under me from the jump was influencer. They were interesting,
I didn't
right?
know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
plot twist. And that was something where I was like, okay, can we talk about it? Like, can like,
I might be able to help.
I might be able to help. And literally it was hilarious because Huda walks up to me, we're on set in Los Angeles, and she's like, so you're gonna like run influencer, right? And I was like, am I? And she's like, are you? I was like, am I? And like, and we went from there. So, the thing is, the influencer program was already strong. They were already doing like some of the, they were doing some of the coolest press kits, like on the thing, like, Huda's eye is impeccable and the team's eye is impeccable when it comes to that, creating cool, intricate, social worthy, gram worthy stuff. And we just dug in and we started to take North American strategies that we had to kind of cultivated over years and affecting them in the United States because they were never affected in the United States before, and putting them into Europe, putting them into the Middle East region. So it was an amazing thing that first 6 months or a year because they had such an amazing team. And we just needed to basically start turning on the gas. You know what I mean? We just started to flip switches. What if we do what we're doing and we just adjust and do it here? What if we take this thing and we expand it and we do it here? So it was a lot of watch and learn. That first 6 months was a lot of watch and learn because the team's amazing. So that was the big change for me in my career because I was very used to either going into a team and being like, scramble, let's try the, you know what I mean? But this team was already a machine. So that was a growth for me because I had to figure out that they were already so good. You know what I mean? They were already so good. So just kind of expanding and amplifying what we were already kicking ass at was a really fun challenge and and continues to be a really fun challenge. But the team is we talk about the team in Huda Beauty in general across all three offices as like we're scary. Like we have a scary team. There's a lot of really good brain power on different continents.
You guys have an incredible amount of firepower across that brand. It's pretty impressive, the collection of talent you guys got together.
We're the scary bunch for sure. Yeah.
It's you got a dream team there. It's good. And I'm only basing it on the people that I know, right?
Yeah.
Which is like you, Natalie, Susan, etc.
Yeah.
Obviously Huda, Mona.
Everybody's really fantastic. So, but to wrap up your question, the challenge was basically looking at a moving machine and trying to slow it down long enough to figure out where you could put another piston, where you could add like a supercharger, where you could, you know what I mean? Like where you could get bigger tires. I don't know, whatever kind of car thing I'm going on. I don't know anything about cars. So I don't know I don't know how my brain went that way, but there we go. I'm having my Butch moment, but but yeah, so it's really interesting, and it's an ongoing iterative process. And it's fun. It's like really cool because your mind expands in a way once you hear when there's something already working. It's almost more magical, right? Because people are like, well, actually, I tried this, and the conversations that are open and the conversations that can open up around that when you actually take the time to talk to a team who already knows what they're doing. you both get sharper. Everybody gets sharper. Oh, I already tried that. Oh, well, did you try it this way? Oh, I've never thought about that before from my perspective. So that's kind of the brilliance of this situation, is that I feel like I've come in and I've been able to offer some good insight. And let me tell you, I've turned around and been like, well, shit, I've never thought about that before. And that's really cool. Yeah.
I thought I knew what I was doing.
I joke with Alia and Huda all the time. And I'm like, I really thought I was really good at this. Like, I really thought this was my thing, and I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna go sip some bone broth and cry. Give me a minute. Like, I'm gonna be fine. But it's
oh my gosh, it's actually really cool when I've had a lot of those moments too, as we've built out our team, where it's I'll send something to our VP of sales or to our head of marketing or whatever, and I'm like, hey, have you guys thought about this? Already working on it. I'm like, fuck, I thought I had it. I thought I had a good idea there.
Sometimes you just want one. Sometimes you're like, I just want to win today. Give me one win, but that's the good thing about brilliant people and working with brilliant people, because if you're the smartest guy in the room, it's probably the wrong room, that kind of old adage. Let me tell you, at Huda Beauty, there's a lot of smart people in those rooms, and sometimes you're like, why didn't I say this 2 weeks ago? How come I, you know what I mean? And it's but that's the brilliant part of it, and that's the beauty of working on a team, and it has become one of my favorite parts of working at Huda Beauty, is that the conversations that get sparked take everybody's game up. Everybody's game gets lifted. So that's the big difference and the beauty of it.
Absolutely. And it's just, I feel the same way, and that I just know there's just a lot of my people on our team that are just much smarter than me. And I'm like, well, I'm I'm gonna roll with it. I'm gonna do my best here. Thanks. Glad that we hired you.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And let me tell you, I feel the same way sometimes. So you're not alone, but that's a good place to be. That's a good place to be. And that's kind of why, and that's one of the reasons I love Huda and Huda Beauty, is just that aspect of it is so, it's mentally stimulating every single day.
Totally. So let's talk about, I, like I said, I did some background research. I did some texting, some calling, and we mentioned Susan Kim a few times. So she is your one of your partners in crime here in the U.S.
She is. She has become my work wife / work soulmate in the United States.
So when I asked her, what you were kind of really good at, one of the things that she mentioned was managing kind of difficult social relationships, social problems. And I know, obviously, once you get to be the number one influencer in the beauty world, you're going to people like to try and take down the king, right? And so how has it been kind of managing that process? And I'm sure you dealt with some of this at Anastasia as well, where you're just going to deal with people that are going to be overtly negative. And I know that that's one of the bigger problems that brands find.
Yeah.
I had a call with the CEO and founder of a brand that sold for hundreds of millions of dollars fairly recently. And she was really struggling with how, she's like, I've got all these people that are tearing me down. What do I do? So how have you managed that? How do you guys deal with, or how have you dealt with those kinds of problems?
Well, tell that person that I'm sorry, and she can always call me. I will give free. I'll sing for my supper. She just has to take me somewhere. But I'm a big foodie, so you know what? Just let her know. But the thing is we talked about this a little bit earlier, where you can boil down so much of good marketing, good management, and good leadership. And I really stress leadership in this state. In this sentence, in this question, as boiling. Good leaders typically have really, really, really high emotional intelligence. And I know that's not a typical answer that you're going to hear from whoever is going to give a talk, a TED Talk or whatever about leadership. But for me, in my career, the things and the people I've been blessed enough to work with, people who cultivate this really kind of superhuman strength, superpower in emotional intelligence, are the people you want to work for. Because why? Because they understand you, they get you, they are with you, and they treat you in the way that you want to be treated. that notion of emotional intelligence gets you really far in a lot of things. And in one of these areas, it's kind of what Susan brought up. It's that social drama, right? Having a really strong sense of how people are thinking, how people are going to react to something, how people are viewing this right now. Because let me tell you, nobody who's acting like a keyboard warrior, as I like to call them, nobody, most of them don't sit there and say, oh, I'm being hurtful. They don't sit there and say, oh, this is not right. Actually, many of them feel like they're doing the right thing. They feel like they are fighting for what they believe in. And you have to look at that, and you have to kind of honor that and say, okay, and you have to separate, you have to look at it and you have to separate and become stronger for it. And this is kind of what I've always done and tried to do in any of the brands with any of the founders that I've worked with. Let's look at it. What are they saying? What is this group of people saying? And let's really understand and process and say, what should I take on and what do I not agree with? And I think the knee-jerk reaction is for brands, brand like marketing people, maybe some founders, because obviously it's their name and their face, is to say, no, that's not me, no, and reject. But get deeper and get below the surface and say, what about this could be a little true? Or maybe if it's not true, could be perceived this way, right? Because we don't, we know that in our hearts, like this drama, it's not true, right? But why is it being perceived that way? And what can we take on and what can we do better? And that is, I think, why I am pretty good at kind of like crisis comms. I'm pretty good at, like social drama and things like that, because there's an inherent understanding of, well, let's look at this from a really human perspective. Let's look at this like we're the person who's actually writing this comment, right? Let's not look at it from the vantage point of we're getting this comment, because we know how that feels. But I want to know how the person writing this comment feels, because it's going to inform all of our decisions after this. And that is where I think most people, they never even get on the boat. The boat has left the pier, they don't even get on the boat. So they're sitting on the pier with their fireworks and saying, and fighting like a social battle when, and it's kind of mind-blowing. Like, to be honest, like some of the things that you see online and on Instagram and, even now TikTok and things like that, it's pretty mind-blowing how people react to some of these things. And I get it, because it feels like a personal attack. And you really just have to look at it from another person's perspective, and that should inform your action. So that's basically, and from there, like after you have that step, then you play, mental chess, and you say, okay, I'm going to make a statement from the brand that's going to be what? Well, your statement from the brand should be really like 2 to 3 things. One, it should be concerned about your community, period. Your number one thing should not be defending the brand. It should be concern for your community. Second should be, this is what I stand for as a human, as a person, as a brand. Okay? And third, this is what I'm going to do about some of these issues that are being brought to our attention. It should have those 3 things. And if you have missed that first, concern for my community, concern for the community that we are responsible for cultivating, and you just jump right into 2 and 3, you've lost 50% of the battle. So that's kind of how I envision it, to really think about crisis comms, if you'd like to call it that, and that's the basics, the 101 of it.
It's incredibly difficult for people to feel criticized and then to respond without emotion. Like it is an absolute skill, I think. And I know that for me, having been involved in client management, in sales, etc., I think that you develop a slightly thicker skin for dealing with those kinds of things. And on top of that, so I think there's 2 things. One, it's hard for people to really kind of handle that. It's hard to respond and not respond emotionally. And then secondarily, I think that it's hard to kind of conceptualize how big the audience is that's connected to a brand like Huda. Which is like Huda, you're dealing with probably 100 million people that are going to interact with this brand, if not more. And it doesn't take a very high percentage of those people to misinterpret something or to not agree with a particular stance to have like 10 to 20 people ripping you online. And so,
Exactly.
so you just have to like think about it from a numerical perspective. It's just a very small percentage of the audience. Like, although this one person is really upset, like ultimately it's the vast majority of people connected to your brand and connected to you as a person, like you, right?
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
They just don't say it out loud all the time. And so, it's definitely a skill you've mastered there. It's not an easy one.
And I would say this too, like, it's okay to, I think a lot of people are like, okay, don't respond with emotion. And I think you need to meter when you need emotion and when you maybe should just, amp it up or amp it down. I actually encourage people to respond with emotion, but respond with positive emotion. Don't ever respond from a place of defensiveness or things like that, but pour all the emotion in, but pour the right emotion in. Pour stewardship of your community in. Pour love for makeup and the brand in. Pour responsibility, if that's what the situation calls for. Pour that in. That is, I think, where a lot of people miss the mark. It's they start with negative emotions, or they do this really corporate thing where it's like like robot, one of those recapture things, like how many crosswalks are there, and like that's the that's the response, like, hello, how many times, like, yes, we see you, we hear you, XO, you're like, that's not a response. And
no.
And I think people get confused, and the biggest thing I would say is people get scared.
Yeah.
People get scared, and move through that fear, and really take your time and say something out of your heart, and I think you'll be okay. And get yourself a good PR person. Get yourself a really good comms person to run ideas by.
The sounding board is helpful. I think we haven't run into too many negative crises, luckily, just because we're not a big consumer brand. But it's nice to have people in that role. Okay, so let's do one more question about kind of general industry. I've got like so many more we could do, but we're running so long.
Sorry, I'm a talker.
Oh no, it's great. This has been awesome. I'm so glad we did this.
Me too.
So let's talk about other brands. So I have two questions about other brands. So one, I'd love to hear about some brands that you really admire. So brands that you haven't worked with, that you kind of look at and say, hey, I think they're just doing a fantastic job, if you have any of those.
Yeah, of course. So are we talking about in industry, out of industry?
Could be either. Really your call.
Could be anything. Okay, so I gotta say, I think that the recent launch of Patrick Starr's One Size, I actually think that the content behind that was mind-blowingly good. I literally sat there and I was like, and I'm a content snob, admittedly, when it comes to content in the beauty industry, and I have to say that, he came at it and his team came at it from a place where I was interested in watching a beauty launch promo where that has not happened in a while. You know what I'm saying?
I would say you've probably been exposed to a couple of those, so
and maybe a few, and and so I think that as a kickoff, Patrick Starr has been amazing, and the team there has been amazing, and I think that's something that's one to watch, and that has really made me kind of think and say, okay, this is really good. So super impressed by them. I continue to be impressed by to be perfectly honest, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm impressed with some jewelry brands that are going out and doing really interesting things. There's a brand called Parts of Four that is this very small, very indie. I think they're located in Paris, and I think they have an office in Spain or something. I'm not entirely sure, but they're a very niche, off kilter brand, and they just think about things in a little bit of a different way. Their content is super strange. Their photography is very is cool and weird. And I like focusing on, to be honest, I like focusing on small guys.
Yeah.
I think small guys is where where you get the creativity. You know, they say like, you know, what is it? Necessity is the mother of all invention, and I actually don't agree. I think scrappiness is the mother of all invention.
Yeah.
I think small, scrappy teams come up with some cool stuff. And then the last one I'll say is it's actually another influencer brand, but it kind of blew me away with her launch. It was Desi and her sunglasses line. I loved the fact that it wasn't beauty. I loved the fact that her, actually Huda was the one who brought it to my attention. Huda and Mona were the ones who brought it to my attention in my last call with them. And I really did a little bit of a deep dive into Desi, and I was like, this brand is cool. Like, it's just cool. I love any brand that will elicit an emotional response. I want to feel something, and I don't care if you're, you know, $100 billion a year brand, or if you're $100 a year brand. If I look at your content, if I watch your videos, I need to feel something in the first 10 seconds or less. And some brands are really getting it, and that's kind of what I look for. I'm like, what do I feel? Because we're all phone numb, right? We're all screen numb. And what is that thing that's going to elicit that kind of human response, that human connection, is what I look at.
Well, I'm gonna have to check out both of their launches a little bit more closely. Again, like you, I think I get a little bit, I don't even know if it's numb, just overload, just so much content.
Overload.
Like, I constantly have 10 to 20 tabs of shit I want to read. And like, and there's 1,000 brands out there that I could be looking at. So I'll have to check them out. Yeah. Thanks for the recommendations. Okay.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
cool.
Go ahead.
I said they're pretty cool. Like, if you look at particularly the Sephora content for one size, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get to, so we'll do some fun end of show questions, and these were
all
sourced by Claudia. So, and I was nice and pulled a couple out of there.
Should I be scared?
We'll see. Well, the first one's not, this one's a little bit more generic, but she asked you to share, and I don't know if she's talking about a particular story, but to share your funniest story that you can share while you were on a brand trip with influencers.
Oh, Lord. Claudia, you're getting a text message after this. Okay. The funniest story. Okay, so there have been some moments, I won't lie, there have been some moments where I laugh. And again, like, these people are just such cool humans. And it's funny because work is sometimes not work, right? Work is a lot of the times on these trips playtime. And like, let's have fun, let's let loose. And there might have been some times in certain countries where people might have thought that the people on my trip were like for purchasing for the evening, let's just say. And that was that was a new one for me, because not speaking the language particularly of the place I was in, trying to shoo people, very aggressive people, I should say, away from the lovely humans who are my friends at the time on that trip. Oh my gosh! So that has been one of the funniest and also like most awkward things, to be honest. There was a time where in a hotel in Paris, I was taking a shower before we were getting ready for like a big dinner. It was like a reveal dinner in Paris, and I saw like through this like very strange Parisian like ornate shower thing I was in. I was like, is this the shower? What is this? And I remember like looking through this like leaded glass door while in the shower, and I'm seeing my phone like firecrackers, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give it a second, because it's either like a bunch of messages that just came in because maybe my reception went in and out, whatever, So then it went dark, and I was like, haha, and I literally was like like washing my hair, and all of a sudden, and I was like, oh god. So I remember like I got out of the shower, soap in my hair, like literally like tried to get as much soap out of my hair as possible, shampoo in my eyes, and I just had like a barrage of messages that was like, SOS, I can't get out of a cab because they won't let me out of a cab because I'm trying to pay in dollars. And I'm like, okay. So I remember like putting on a robe, like freaking like soap in my hair, walking down with euros, trying to find the person who has locked the people on our trip in their taxi, not letting them out because they don't have euros to pay.
Oh my god!
So I was like, and it's just stuff like that, right? It's just like every day, one after the other. It's just everyday stuff like that. There was somebody who we had this amazing like setting where there was a pool that like the floor actually came up from the pool and became a dance floor.
Oh.
But it actually started to sink once a couple people were on it. So people were like sinking into the pool, and I was like, well, okay, here we are, folks. Like, and we just kind of turned it into like a strut off in like knee deep water. So it actually worked out for the best. But I was like, how do we spin this? This is going to be interesting. So, but just funny little things that come up like that.
Totally. Well, okay, so second one, and this is Claudia, not me. So I'm just the messenger here. She wants to know how many calories were in your last tater tot cheat meal.
Okay, so first of all, I want to know, Claudia from Norvina does not follow me, so I want to know what spooky ass shadow account she has where she is following me. One, I'm going to text her literally right now. And tell Claudia for me, if she doesn't watch this, I have no idea, but I appreciate her supporting my fitness. My fitness as she has always done. So I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But probably too many.
Okay.
Probably too many.
That's valid.
Yep.
Okay, last one. And this one, I don't know what this is. It has something to do with cats and ghosts.
I hope I know what this is. Okay. So she does watch my shit. That's really scary. I'm gonna tell her, be like, wait, I thought I was safe. I thought. So she does watch it.
There you go.
Okay.
So what is that? Like, I don't know what it is. Ghost cats?
So I have a cat around here somewhere. She's like a very spooky. I refer to her as like spooky ass bitch. Like, she is a spooky looking cat. She's white. She's this weird breed called a Devon Rex. Okay. And it's a British breed, but they basically look like little aliens.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So I have this cat, and she's kind of weird, and she's funny, and very needy, but she will literally stare at the corner of a wall. Any room, I could be in any room, and she'll literally talk to the wall. And I'm like, I can't with this. I can't. I literally I'm like working, or it's like 1 a.m, and I'm like, I can't with this right now, because Claudia knows I'm a little bit of like a freak, like when it comes to paranormal, supernatural stuff. If something if there's a bump in the night, I'm out. I'm like in my car. I'm out. Like, I would never be one of those people in a scary movie who gets killed, because my house would be up and out. I'd be like, there'd be no movie. I would not be starring in this movie, because I hear boo, and I'm like, we're good. I'm out. Yeah. My mama raised me right. I get out. So she does this thing where she'll talk to somebody in the room who's not me. Because she'll talk to me, and then she'll turn, and she's done this thing a couple times where she'll be literally speaking to some phantom that I can't see, and I'll place myself in front of her and start talking to her to get her eyes. And she'll do this. She'll look at me, and then she'll go and she'll look next to me again. So whatever she was talking to, almost it stepped out from behind me, and I was like, I'm done. I'm getting rid of this cat. I love her. I will give her to a good home, but you're stressing me out, cat. You're stressing me out. So that's that story. Oh my god. Random, completely random that she.
Also funny that we've uncovered that Claudia has a fake account,
a sleeper account. Yeah. I'm gonna be literally. Okay, by the way, I have 6 followers, so I'm it's gonna be fairly easy to narrow down. I'm gonna be like, which one are you?
Oh my god. All right, well, with that, I think we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I learned a ton, laughed a ton, and really appreciate it. I think people are gonna learn a lot, and it's, a lot of the things that you're talking about are things that are just so, they should be so obvious, but they're just not understood. And so I think people are going to learn a lot.
Hit subscribe now. Earned by Tribe Dynamics. Tribe Dynamics unlocks your social media influencer community. Our platform not only tracks and measures your best influencer relationships, but discovers new influencers to grow your business through earned media. Get started with a demo today at tribedynamics.com. tribedynamics.com.